Hey, everybody, welcome to another Between Two Speakers, where we talk to speakers about speaking. I'm Randy Ford. I'm a writer and storytelling strategist. You can find me at firststorystrategies.com.
And hi, everyone. I'm Marianna Swallow. I'm a professional public speaking coach and workshop leader. And I also teach business and professional communications at Loyola University in Chicago. I'm really excited for today's episode because we have someone that Randy and I both know and love. Today, I'm happy to welcome Rebecca Anderson, one of the founding pastors at Gilead Chicago, a new church in Chicago. And Rebecca, tell us where we can find Gilead online and where we can find you.
Yeah, so Gilead's online at gileadchicago.org. Gilead is Gilead. So gileadchicago.org. And of course, we're on Facebook and Instagram. And my storytelling work is at earshotstories.com.
Great, thank you. So, Rebecca, I wanted to have you on as a guest because I'll start with the first thing I wanted to ask you about. You actually pastor at two places, and you are basically cranking out a speech every week. And I work with people who struggle to crank out one a year or twice a year. So, how are you able to continually produce? But also, because I've heard many of your sermons, and they're, for anyone listening, they're quite enjoyable. Full disclosure, I attend Gilead from time to time. Um, how do you keep them fresh? Because that's one thing I notice about your sermon that I hope no one minds me saying. And Randy, you can chime in on this because I know you've been to Gilead. Your sermons are way fresher and more engaging than most of the sermons I grew up with. So, how do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, I laughed as soon as you asked because I was like, well, one way is a weekly deadline. I mean, that really helps. So, it's a thing that I'm responsible for. So it's flip and it's real. But in terms of the fresh content, I mean, first of all, thank you for saying that. I don't think they always are. I mean, I definitely go through kind of dry spells where it feels like more like work a day, and I do it truly because there's a deadline and because it's my job. But my process, so I'm a storyteller also, and became a storyteller probably about the same time I started preaching. And I think there's some overlap in the way that I prepare a sermon and the way I think about a story. With a sermon, both of our churches, we operate within a monthly. It's usually about a month long, a monthly theme. So I'm someone who benefits greatly from having an idea early enough to let it percolate. And I do everything last minute. So having a monthly theme helps me at least have the themes sort of swirling around in my head. So as you said, you said before we started recording, our theme this month at Gilead is Oversharing is the Brand. Every January, we do a series that's meant to sort of introduce the congregation of Queer Storytelling Bar Church, to introduce the congregation to new folks who might be looking for a church out of like a New Year's resolution, but also to sort of underscore our identity for ourselves, like telling the story of us to us. So Oversharing is the Brand has long been like an inside joke that my co-pastor Vince Amlin and I say to each other, both to sort of make excuses for ourselves for telling like sort of outrageously private things publicly. But we also think that there's a real value to it. So anyway, so I'm getting off, but so I have this theme, Oversharing is the Brand, and I have the why that we're doing it, which is to introduce or reintroduce ourselves, to sort of shore up our sense of self. And so I'm thinking about the value of oversharing, which doesn't feel like oversharing. It feels like regular sharing for me. And then there's a narrowing in each week that I'm responsible for preaching. I do preach about every week between the two congregations. So coming in more closely on the theme, like what about this theme is important or interesting to me? So what's it about is a question that I either start or end a process with, like, what is this about? What's it mean for me this time? Because in preaching especially, you come back to the same things again and again, but what's it about this time? And then I'm trying to think about places of intersection with my own life or the world, where it's often about a kind of emotional valence, like when have I had not a similar experience to like a biblical text, because thank God I had very few experiences that are like biblical text. But
Well, you are living through a plague. Let's just put that out there.
so now, yeah, now I do have
Now you're
some. Now there's more resonance. But I try to think of like what's the feeling in this like biblical text, or what is this about, and where is there something similar that's about something similar in the world. And my style of preaching that I love the most, like when I feel like I'm on my game and in my voice, is to stitch together as closely as possible a biblical or whatever the like what might feel like the sermony parts, like the Bible story or the teaching or whatever it is, to stitch that part of the sermon as closely together with the personal or contemporary narrative, so that people can hear potentially can hear some resonance between those two stories, like what made me put them side by side in the first place. And so sometimes that's as simple as a party trick where I use the same phrase to tell the Bible story as I do tell my own story. But that's a thing that I work hard at because I want it to be fresh. It's not important to me that people like love the Bible, like the Bible isn't the thing, but the work that those stories can do for some people, like I want to give those back to people, especially who in some cases have had them taken away because they've heard, can we swear on this podcast? I'll just say bad
Oh yeah, you can swear. We swore on the last one.
Shitty sermons or shitty theology. I want to be like, no. Like if this is still meaningful to you, it's yours. So that's why I want to do that work of, in your word, like freshness, because I want it to be this like lively, and potentially useful thing to someone. So that's a lot, but that's some of how I think about the how of a sermon and the why, like why I try to do it that way.
Yeah,